Hope everybody's doing well. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge. Today's Wednesday, April 14, 2021. Time now is 7:30 p.m. Just take care of some initial housekeeping items. The meeting of the Municipal Land Use Board of the Borough of River Edge is being held remotely and recorded via Zoom due to the COVID-19 pandemic and is in compliance with the provisions of Executive Orders 103 and 104, the Open Public Meetings Act, and associated regulations. Notice of this meeting was published in the Bergen Record on January 20, 2021, and the Ridgewood News on January 22, 2021, posted on the front doors of Borough Hall and posted on the borough's website. The notice included the dial-in and login information necessary for public participation and access to this meeting remotely. A copy of the agenda for this meeting was made available on the borough's website near the posting of the meeting notice and included the dial-in and login information. During the public comment period of this meeting, if you would like to make a public comment, please press the raise hand button on Zoom or dial *9 on your telephone keypad to raise your hand. The board will address you by name or by the last 4 digits of your telephone number. You may mute and unmute yourself by pressing the microphone icon on Zoom or dialing *6 on your telephone keypad. You must state your name and address prior to making a public comment. Members of the public were permitted to submit written comments prior to the meeting via mail or email, which will be read during the public comment period. Okay. So Marina, can we start with a roll call?
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Here.
Mr. Caslin? Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, Marina. Anybody else hear Marina?
Yes,
I can
yes,
hear.
I can
Yeah,
hear.
I can hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Chris, say yes. I don't think Chris can hear anybody.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Michelle, why don't you tell Chris to go out and come back in again?
Maybe he has like a speaker on or something like that. I'll proceed with the roll call though. Ms. Boland? Here. Mr. Merman?
Here.
Mr. Grasso?
Here.
Mr. Cray?
Here.
Mr. Kellion?
Here.
Councilman Kinigo?
Here.
Mr. Gibbons?
Here.
Mr. Pfeffer? Oh, I don't see Mr. Pfeffer. He's absent tonight. And Mr. Esposito.
Here.
And we'll wait for Mr. Caslin to come back in to fix his audio.
Marina, maybe our vice chair can just run us through the housekeeping items that are on the, while Chris is rebooting.
Yeah, that's fine.
Dick?
Mr. Merman, if you don't mind, we just have the minutes and then some resolutions.
Correct. Let's go to the minutes. I don't have a copy in front of me, so what was the date?
It was the March 24th,
Minutes.
2021.
Okay, do we have any Chris, are you been? Do we have any comments on the minutes by any of the members? Any corrections or comments?
Nope.
I had one correction that I
none?
note. I had one correction, Mr. Merman.
Okay,
Just that it's listed as Chairman Caslin as running the meeting, but actually you ran the meeting last time. So we'll just make that change.
okay, all right. Very good. Can I hear a motion regarding the minutes, please?
So moved, Gibbons.
Second, anybody?
Second.
Great. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Not hearing any, we'll move right on.
Dick, I think Chris is back with
Hey,
us.
Dick. Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
That's okay. Yep, loud and
We can hear
clear.
you.
Yes, loud and clear.
The wonders
Well,
of Zoom.
we committed you, Chris, while you were gone. We committed you to a big dinner for everyone, okay?
Not the first time that's happened, I gotta tell you.
Okay, so we're up to looking at the resolutions, Chris.
Okay, great. So did you cover Porter?
No, we haven't gone over any of the
you haven't gone over?
memorializations.
Oh, more is, okay. Okay. Why don't we go to the memorializations then? The first one on the list here is for David Porter, 203 Berkeley Road, Block 906, Lot 14. Do we have comments on the resolution? Okay, there being no comments, may I have a motion to approve these resolutions?
So moved, Mike Cray.
Have a second?
Second.
So many,
Sounded
Okay.
like Mike Cray and Lou Grasso.
Okay. So I'll do a roll call. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin was absent at the meeting, the last meeting, so he will not be eligible to vote for any of these memorializations. Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes.
Mr. Grasso,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkalian,
Yes.
Councilman Kenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Pfeffer is absent tonight, Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes.
Very good. Next item is a resolution for Mark Dullahan, 608 Fifth Avenue, Block 508, Lot 28. Any comments on the resolution? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Gibbons.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gibbons and Mr. Esposito.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Kellyan,
Yes.
Councilman Kenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Good. The next item is Mr. and Mrs. Kermika, 120 Davis Drive, Block 1202, Lot 21. Any comments on the resolution? Okay, may I have a motion to approve
So moved.
So made, Merman.
and a second?
I'll second. And before, Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. Mr. Pfeffer is here with us now, so it should be on a record that he's joined us. Hi, Bruce. Good evening.
Hi, thank you. Sorry I'm late.
That's
Good evening, Mr. Pfeffer. Thank you, Mr. Arkalian.
Okay. All right, I'll do the roll. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso,
Yes.
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Kellyan,
Yes.
Councilman Kenigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
Yes.
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Okay, everyone. We move on now to completeness review. First item is Jack Ansarian, 282 Oak Avenue, Block 1206, Lot 4. Marina?
Prior to this meeting, I reviewed the proof submitted by the applicant, and they were sufficient to permit the board to proceed and have jurisdiction tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barron's?
Good evening. So the application is essentially for an addition to the existing one-story dwelling as well as a rear deck addition. From my standpoint in reviewing the application materials, they can be deemed complete.
Any questions from the board? Okay. May I have a motion to deem this application complete?
So moved.
Okay,
I saw Mr. Gibbons with the motion.
Second.
and Councilman Kanigo with the second.
Okay. Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes,
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes,
Mr. Grasso,
yes,
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Councilman Kanigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
yes,
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the application has been deemed complete.
all right, thank you. The next item for completeness review is Dominic and Francine Munofo, 332 Van Saun Drive, Block 1107, Lot 36. Development of additions to the existing dwelling with associated site improvements, front and rear yard setbacks, and a front porch encroachments in the front yard, seeking variance relief. Marina?
So prior to the meeting, I reviewed the proof submitted by the applicants, and they were sufficient to permit the board to have jurisdiction tonight.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Barron's?
This is another application for additions to an existing dwelling with associated site improvements. And in my review of the application materials, I've determined them to be complete.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, I have a motion to deem the application complete.
so made Merman,
Second, Craig.
Mr. Merman and Mr. Cray, as a second.
Okay, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Mr. Caslin,
Yes,
Ms. Boland,
Yes.
Mr. Merman,
yes,
Mr. Grasso,
yes,
Mr. Cray,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Councilman Kanigo,
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons,
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer,
yes,
Mr. Esposito.
Yes.
Okay, the application has been deemed complete.
okay. Thank you. Okay, so we now move to the new business item on the agenda. The first item up is Jack Ansarian, 282 Oak Avenue, Block 1206, Lot 4. Develop additions to the existing dwelling with associated site improvements, seeking lot coverage variances. It looks like Mr. Ansarian, I believe you're in the gallery tonight.
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Are you?
Hello. Oh, would you like him to explain the application first, or should I do the swearing in?
Why don't we have him explain the application?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. My name is Jack Ansarian, and I live at 282 Oak Avenue with my wife, Annie. I'm here tonight with the project architect, Piero Gabucci. He's with Axis Architectural Group. Piero, are you there?
I am here, yes.
Okay. Why don't you please proceed with describing the project?
Okay,
Should
Mr.
I
Ansarian,
just put in? Yeah.
before your architect gets started, Marina, why don't we go ahead and swear them in?
Okay, Mr. Ansarian, I'll just have you state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record, please.
Jack Ansarian, Anserian, 282 Oak Avenue, River Edge.
Okay, and then could you please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. And then with your architect, I will also swear him in as well. Sir, could you please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record, and then provide the board with some background on your experience, please?
Okay. My name is Piero Gabucci, spelled Gabucci. I'm with the Axis Architectural Group in Englewood at 16 Highwood Avenue. I've been an architect for 34 years, maybe more. I've actually recently, just to give you some experience before boards, I was recently before Paramus, Bergenfield, and several other Bergen County towns. So I've been doing residential architecture for a long time.
Okay. Does the board accept those qualifications?
Any questions from the board? Okay, we'll find those to be acceptable. Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
you.
and then could you just raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so Mr. Ansarian, why, if you would proceed with a description of the project you're seeking to accomplish here.
And as I said, I really would like Mr. Gabucci to do that.
Okay,
If that's okay with you, I would just like to make that presentation for him.
please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, well, the Ansarians have lived at this current address for, my understanding, over 34 years at this point. Their house is a modest one-story ranch, very much like the houses around it. They're very consistent with their neighborhood. Their desire as they're aging is to stay in the house that they've been in for a long time. They asked me to design a new master bedroom for them. Because the house is a one-story ranch, they wanted to keep that kind of architecture, which made complete sense. Unfortunately, the house had already exceeded the coverage that was allowed, both for the building and for the improved coverage. So we'll talk about that. But it just made sense to look to put an addition where there was the most space on the property. You'll also notice on the drawing, and I can call up my drawing if anybody doesn't have a copy of it. But by drawing, you can clearly see we made the effort to keep the addition well within the setbacks and tuck it in behind the current house, also keeping it much lower than the high point of the ridge.
Could I just stop you for 1 second? Does anybody not have the drawing? Do we need the drawing shared on the screen?
I can share it if you'd like.
That. Great, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, so if you're looking at the site plan, you can see that we tucked in the addition in the back corner, and as I mentioned, we try to stay. We did stay within the setback requirements on the back of the house. As I said, we really were dealing with the fact that the house had already, exceeded the coverage allotment for it. So we're here seeking 3 variances. 2 are for coverage. One is for building coverage, and the other one is for lot improvement. The third one, which I'll get to, is also a front setback coverage, front setback issue. And as I said, I'll get back to that shortly. As I mentioned, the addition is on the back. The desire was to keep it all on one level. As they get older, they're bringing up the laundry onto this floor. They're just making this much more livable for themselves as they age. We are not adding another bedroom. We are actually killing one of the smaller bedrooms and just expanding it. So we're not adding additional bedrooms for any reason. This is purely a desire for them to expand their sleeping arrangement. And as I said, so part of the coverage issue is they have an existing deck. With the new addition that we added, we felt it was maybe nice just to extend the deck to give them access to it from the backyard, and not leave like a small gap between the deck and the addition. So it just seemed wise architecturally to connect the deck and the addition. I do want to talk briefly about the front. This house is facing basically due west, which has a tremendous amount of light. So the front door being almost at grade, we thought maybe just a simple canopy with columns might protect that door and protect the fact that, as I said, the house is practically at grade for rain and snow. So it was just a way to give them some comfort for coming in and out of the main part of the house. So it was more than just aesthetic. It was also very functional. But unfortunately, the current house is already on the setback, so this small open porch is placed in the setback and therefore requiring a variance. It's really a simple application in terms of the variance. As I said, it's two really Class C variances for bulk requirements. I would like to think that this is not detrimental to the street or neighbors in any way. As I said, it's tucked in behind. You won't even notice that it's there. We did maintain the side yard setbacks. And even the front porch is kept to a very small one-story canopy addition. And it really, if you look at the house, it adds a little bit of aesthetic, but it also gives them some of that security going in and out of that front door. So I don't believe this is at all detrimental to the street or the town ordinance, and I don't think it impairs the intent of the municipal code at all. So again, it's very simple. That's the presentation. Mr. Ansarian's here. If you'd like to ask him some questions, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer anything you'd like.
If this is Tom Barron's board planner, if we can first, Mr. Gabucci, just the first question I have for you is just to please specify the extent of variance relief being sought. I'm sorry if I missed it, but so I realize your client's requesting 3 variances. Could you just specify exactly what those variances are, please?
Certainly. The first variance is for building coverage. We're allowed 25%. They're asking for relief to go to 34.6%. That's for building coverage. The second variance is for the improved lot coverage. The requirement is 35%, a maximum. They're asking for a relief to go to 43.4%. That's an increase of 8.4%. And the third one is the front setback. The front setback is required as 30 feet, and they're looking to be at 24.5 feet.
All right, thank you. And in preparing these plans for your client and looking at the various development options, did you happen to take a look at the surrounding community, and can you draw any comparison about this proposal and the extent of variance relief being requested and as compared to the neighborhood conditions? Do you have anything to offer there?
Well, I can say respectfully, I hadn't really considered that, other than the neighborhoods around them. If we're looking for a front yard or a height, I think that would have come into play a little bit more than what we were proposing. So I would say no, I hadn't really compared it to or done research on what had been given variances or what were sought for and given in the past, but I had not really spent much time. I know his immediate neighbor is a 2-story house.
Right.
But most of what's across the street and what's next to him are essentially similar 1-story ranch homes.
Would you say that the coverages being proposed are similar in proportion to those of the surrounding neighborhood?
I would only be speculating on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I'd hate to answer that question without doing some research.
In designing the plans for the home, was there any consideration to potentially scaling things back? Or I guess the question is, how did you arrive at the proposal? I understand the deck is essentially the deck addition is to square it off and to connect it to the master bedroom. And the master bedroom, it looks like it's 20 by 24, 480 square feet. Could you maybe talk about some of the needs that you were trying to achieve?
Let me first,
in that part of the home.
if for example, that the house were not already in the coverage issue that it existed. It was already over by about 400 square feet over.
Right.
And if it was closer, I would have said, let's see if we can, scale it back. But if you really look at the 20 by 24, which is not only the sleeping area, but the closets and a little bit of sitting area, it just, the idea of making that even just a few square feet less wouldn't have really changed the application much. And I wouldn't have made the room much smaller than that, just for argument's sake. So we felt like, well, this is really a great thing for them as they move forward, to give them a little bit of space around their bed and in their closet area. So, and you can see we actually took, we crammed in their bathroom and a laundry area in their existing bedroom. So the idea was to keep this as minimal as possible, but to make it realistic for them. So it's really a sleeping area and a walk-in closet for them.
All right. Is there any proposal to mitigate the excess coverages by means of capturing stormwater on site or some other method?
That's certainly a consideration. We would absolutely put in retention if we needed to, a seepage pit or something like that. I suppose when we get to that part of the engineering, we could make that happen. Yes.
Right. So that's something your client would agree to if required by the town engineer?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, very good. My final comment, you touched on the statutory criteria for granting a variance that the board has to consider. You basically touched on the negative criteria, that there's, whether or not there's a substantial impact to the public good and the extent to which it impacts the intent and purpose of the master plan and zoning ordinance. But there's another part to that, and that is the C2 public benefits test. And there has to be a demonstration that the public benefits outweigh any detriments. And I recall your testimony where you basically said there are no detriments. I'm not making that case. That was your words, but we need an affirmative showing that there are public benefits being offered as a result of this application to give the board something that they can approve, essentially. So wondering if you could provide anything in that regard.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I mean, I think for a minor aesthetic change to the front of the house, certainly the porch is the front entry canopy, adds a little bit to the street, to the facade. So I certainly believe architecturally it's a slightly better facade for them. I think the fact that it's a couple that's been wanting to stay in this house and in this community, I think is also a public display of confidence on their part for their community. So I can't really say there's much more to that than just being a good neighbor in how we plan this addition.
All right, thank you. I will turn it over to the board for questioning.
Thanks, Tom. While we open up for questions, Ms. Boland, can we start with you?
I don't really have a question. I do have a comment that I think that the lot coverage is excessive. The lot is not undersized. It's actually larger than most of the lots in River Edge. And I think the 43.4% is a bit too high.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Boland. Mr. Esposito.
No, nothing at this time.
Okay. Mr. Cray?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Boland that with the lot size that it is, that 43% seems to be a little excessive. And I guess questions on how to maybe mitigate that. And there are two that I had. One is, as I look at the master bedroom, and it's it's 20 foot by 24. 2 foot 8 inches of that 20 feet is, I guess that's where the closet area is, and it extends out into the yard. My first question there would be, would this bedroom be, so negatively impacted if that was squared off with the existing line of the house? And you'd lose 2 feet of the 2.5 feet of the width of the bedroom. So that's kind of the first question. Is that something you'd consider to help, kind of mitigate the level of variance you're asking for?
Mr. Gray, the area you're referring to is, as you said, 2'8" by 24.
Yep.
Yeah, it's, for argument's sake, it's about 70 square feet.
Yep.
70 square feet from the 4129 that we're looking for. Would bring us to 42%, to 42.6% from 43.4. It drops at 0.8%. I'm sure Mr. Ansarian would consider that. I don't, with all due respect, I don't feel it's significant enough to, but that's certainly something we could consider.
Okay, the second question is there also an opportunity? I mean, you've got that existing landscaped area between the existing breakfast room and the new master bedroom. That's an open area there, and that's going to remain open, it looks like, where the
we were trying to get some windows still in the existing bathroom, the existing kitchen. There are there's an air conditioning unit there. There's landscape there. So we really just tried to keep it.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the question again, but given how much of a variance you're asking for, if you took the entire master bedroom and slid it over into that space, you'd also delete the requirement for extending the patio, because it would bring the bedroom right up to the patio, and the only place you'd need to do it is up in that little corner on the top. And you'd be moving it in and keeping it in line with the right side of the existing exterior walls. So, I understand you wanting to, have as much, kind of aesthetic and impact as you can, but, looking at the level of variance you're asking for, again, is that something that could be considered?
But we could consider that, certainly. There's we have 122 square feet of new deck. If we just possibly reduce that to something more minimal, that would alleviate.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if you took the entire master bedroom and just slid it over so that it butted up against the existing breakfast room, you would negate, the needing the extension on the deck. You'd be picking up that area we talked about before where the closets are.
Right.
And you'd probably have, again, a more significant impact on the coverage.
That would get us about 200 more square feet closer. So we'd go from 4129 to 3929. So 3929.
If I may, Piero, because doing that it's going to basically become an obstacle to the window that's in the kitchen, plus the window that's in the bathroom, the existing bathroom. So rather than that, how about taking away from the existing deck on the upper left-hand corner of the drawing? Shortening that.
You'd rather take a bigger chunk of the existing deck off?
Yeah.
Well, the existing deck is 500 and some square feet. If we cut that in half or removed that, I can tell you, we can probably save about 400 square feet in there. Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Gray?
Yeah, I think, anything that we can do to kind of get this to a manageable level is worth looking at. So, yeah.
Yeah, that takes away about 400 square feet of the deck.
Mr. Gabucci, could you just please identify the area that we're talking about with your mouse? If you don't mind.
So this is the existing deck. Maybe I can zoom in on it a little bit. This is the existing deck, and what's hatched here is the expansion of the deck to meet the addition. Mr. Ansarian is suggesting this square of the deck could be removed.
Not the whole thing, Piero, but we can reduce the size of that by,
by the
120 feet that we're adding new.
Mr. Ansari, you're suggesting asking for to maintain this addition of deck, but removing part of this deck?
That's correct.
Is that what you think? Well, we'd have to, again, we can remove as much as, if we took a piece out of it, we'd maybe save a couple of 100 square feet. Mr. Ansarian, are you willing to reduce Ms. Gray suggested reducing this setback a little bit? So instead of 20 feet, if we went to say 18 feet, that would remove another almost 70 square feet. Is that reasonable to you?
Well, see, this is the thing. We love River Edge and we love this town. We would like to stay in this town and we would like to grow old and aged in this house. We love our neighborhood, so we don't want to. We want to stay in this house. My wife has a knee problem. She cannot. I mean, she when she goes up and down stairs, her knees hurt her. And plus, she has already gone through 3 surgeries on her feet. And she's prone to falling. So with this improvements, I'm trying to give her some space to move around in old age. So reducing the size of the room, yes, it's doable, but it's going to impede some hardship on her. I'm not saying that I'm going to benefit from these improvements as well, but who knows? I may need the additional space. I don't know what the future is going to bring up. So I would like to keep this layout as much as possible, and rather give up the from the square footage of the deck.
Mr. Craig, can I ask, is there a number that you have in mind as we ask the different board members what you'd like to see in terms of a reduction?
I don't know that I had a hard.
Specific. That's fair. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to, see if we can get it to, kind of accomplish what they want to do, but at the same time, not be excessive in coverage here, particularly in light of, what Ms. Bowen said, is this is already an oversized lot and they're already beyond coverage. I want to just, kind of minimize the impact at all possible.
Yeah, and just to, Mr. Ansari, to address your earlier comments, we are sensitive to certain things, but there are certain rules in which we have to operate and abide by. So, we'd like to try to see the project go forward so long as it complies with various requirements. But let's continue to question the board, and we'll see where we end up. Craig, not to jump in, but any further questions from you?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's turn to Mr. Gibbons.
I would just, echo Mr. Cray's comments. The 43.4%, is a bit high, I think, for most of our thresholds. So if something can be done with the deck, to bring that closer to a 40 number, that, 40 point something, would make me a little more comfortable doing it. Understand your, the situation that you're in and trying to keep that bedroom the size that you need. If we could, that would make me more comfortable, going forward with it.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Mr. Arakalian?
Most of my concerns were brought up eloquently by Ms. Bowen and Mr. Cray, so I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Arakalian. Mr. Grasso?
No comment at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Pfeffer?
Yeah, I have the same concerns that have been expressed already. I think that the spirit of what everyone is saying is that we want to work with the applicant and try to find a way to make this work. But there seems to be room to scale down the project, particularly on the side of the house where I agree with, I believe what something Mr. Cray pointed out, that maybe it could be trimmed so that it's level with the rest of the house, that it doesn't jut out. So I think, there's room for compromise here. And that would be my hope, to see a scaled down version of this. So that's my only comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pfeffer. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, more comments than questions. As of right now, I don't see a public benefit other than to the canopy in the front. The canopy in the front is not an issue for me. I could see myself voting for that. But this is an oversized lot. We normally try to, especially in areas where we might have flooding, we really want to try to keep it to no more than 120% of the maximum. So this seems excessive to me. I would be hard pressed to vote yes for this at this point. I think the comment of maximum improved lot coverage to something like 40% is something that would be more in keeping with the expectations of the master plan and the ordinances that are currently in place. As I said, I wouldn't have a problem with the canopy, because even though that is beyond, there is a public benefit to that. And I really have some strong issues with basically for the maximum building coverage site, according to my math, it is 38.4% over maximum. So it's 138.4% in total. And the maximum improved lot coverage appears to be 24% over maximum improved lot coverage. So yeah, I have some concerns, and I also still don't see, and maybe I'm missing it, and maybe the applicant would like to offer what public benefit there would be for that portion of meeting the expectations of the land use board and the laws surrounding that.
Well, I'd like to propose a couple of things. I'm listening to the comments, and I'm thinking that if we got down to 40%, we're looking to get it down from, just for argument's sake, we're going from 4129 coverage to 3,800 square feet. That's right, just under 40%, 39 point something percent. We have an existing shed that's 100 and I haven't discussed this with Mr. Ansarian, of course. There's an existing shed of 112 square feet, and if we removed enough deck to make up the difference to get it to the 39.9%, do you feel that would be something that the board could see?
Is that being directed towards?
I'm sorry. Let me show you. There's an existing shed in the back, which is in the calculation for the coverage, and if we removed enough of this deck and scaled back even a little bit of the additional deck to get down to under 40%, and I'm saying it'll be 39.9% for argument's sake, bringing it down to under 40% from, so we go from 35% to 39%, 39.5%. If Mr. Ansarian feels comfortable with that, would that be something the board would entertain?
I don't know about the board, but I would feel more comfortable with that, certainly.
Okay. And Mr. Ansarian, you see that as a compromise to reduce the amount of coverage?
Yeah, it's doable.
So it would be the deck, and it would, I'm sorry, the shed in the back corner, and then a piece of this deck, and we would just give you the calculation as to what that reduction is, but it would be equivalent to bringing it down to just shy of 40%. It'll be 3,800 square feet instead of 4,129, and then that of course would decrease the building coverage as well by the same proportion. So that would go from 34.6 down to 31. So they're both equivalent to the coverage. So I'm hoping if that's realistic for the board, I think we would be happy with that.
Let's continue with Mr. Mayor. Anything further? Okay, thank you. Let's continue with board questions, and we can come back to the proposals. I think Councilman Kaneko?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sir, is there a garage in this property?
There's no internal garage, correct?
Okay, so where do you keep all your tools, grass stuff, lawnmower, snow blower, things like that?
In the shed.
That would
In
be
the
in the
shed.
shed, yeah.
So where would you keep them if the shed was gone?
That's going to be a problem.
All right, so if you were gonna remove the shed, you'd probably have to get another shed to replace it, right? I mean, that's
A
realistic.
smaller shed, perhaps.
But it's still a shed, and it's still gonna have to hold a snow blower and lawnmower and various tools and so forth. So I don't think that's a realistic option here. When did you purchase the property?
Oh, we moved in like some 34 years ago, 1987.
Okay, and was the lot coverage already oversized at the time? In other words, the 29%, was it already at 29%?
I did some improvements back in 1998. The kitchen eating area had a window, like a bay window. So I took down the bay window and I replaced it with a sliding door. And that's when I added a certain portion of the deck, the existing deck.
Okay. Do you know how big it was when you purchased it?
If you look at the drawing, it's this was the size of the existing deck, this one here. So with the improvements,
I guess what I'm trying to find out is, did you know that it was over the maximum improved lot coverage and the maximum building coverage when you purchased the home?
No, the contractor pulled permits and we had it pass through all the requirements and in fact it was inspected after the construction was completed. It was inspected and it passed.
Were you told that you wouldn't be able to add any more at the time?
No.
Okay. I tend to agree with everybody as to the size. I think 43.4% is excessive. And I think this board, and having been on it now for a couple of years, this board tries very hard to work with the residents to make things happen. You know, we don't try to throw roadblocks in the way. But what you're asking us to do is something that would set a precedent, which we're not really willing to do. It seems to me that Mr. Cray had a very good and very simple solution here. And that solution is simply slide the entire area over. Yes, you would lose a window or two. And, you know, that may aesthetically not be what you wanted, but you would still get the full amount of room that you need for you and your wife to grow older in this house and be able to move around without any problems, without having to deal with stairs and so forth. You know, adding deck just because you want to add deck doesn't seem to really be a prudent option when we're telling you that the coverage is just a little too much that you're asking us for. So I would ask that you really consider maybe doing what Mr. Cray said and sliding it over. This way you can keep your bedroom that size. You can still step out onto the deck from your bedroom. And what you'd essentially be losing is a couple of windows and having to move the air conditioning unit. And I think that would probably satisfy most, if not all of the people here. I don't think that just cutting a small piece of deck and getting rid of the shed is going to do it for what we've been asking of you and saying to you from our perspective. That being said, I hope that we are able to make it work out for you. Because of course, keeping residents, good, long-standing residents such as yourself, is something that is important to us as well. And I have no problem whatsoever with adding the front little porch. I think it would make the house more attractive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Merman.
Yes, yes. I agree with the previous comments about the improved lot coverage being excessive. My personal threshold is 40%. I've been out, well, I do also noted that you do have the existing shed and there is no garage. I agree with the councilman that a shed is definitely going to be needed. I would like the architect to slide over his plan so we see the whole first floor plan, please. Okay, that's great. There you go. Okay. In previously reviewing this plan, I did, looking for potential solutions. I did note that where you bridge the addition to the existing deck, there's an excessive piece up in the corner there, which is basically a square with a small triangle on it. If we eliminated that, you would still have pretty wide access from the proposed master bedroom to the existing deck. If we looked at the overall floor plan, particularly where the existing deck is, I noticed that in the existing sitting room, the sliders out onto the deck. I think, and I want to offer for consideration, if you remove a large portion of that existing deck, maybe even as far back to where the stairs go into the rear yard, you would probably be deleting or eliminating enough of the calculation to just about be the equivalent of the new addition of the master bedroom. Tom, do you have any feeling? I know we had a discussion on what the square footage of the new deck next to the bridge going across is.
Sure,
discussion?
that hatched area that represents the deck addition
Correct.
is
Just-
it's approximately 120 square feet. Mr.
so-
Gabucci can confirm, but
Yeah,
So,
it's on the zoning chart.
so it's close to 200 square feet.
well,
All right, so that-
about one, okay.
All right, so then if we remove a sizable portion of the existing deck that's to the north, where you don't have any access currently shown on the drawing, it's basically almost excessive. And I did note, looking in the field, that deck runs almost, and it shows it on the plan, almost to the edge of the current exterior wall on the north side. So it is a very, very large deck. So I think our solution should be in adjusting the deck. I recognize you need a shed, whether you like it or not, you're gonna need one. And I don't know what the numbers are gonna work out to be, but that's what I offer.
We can make it work.
Well, I'm trying to make it work, yes.
Yes, thank you.
All right, and I think from a functional standpoint, when your sliding doors go out onto the existing deck, they're in a good position to eliminate a large portion.
Yes.
So personally, I think that's the route you should go down. And it looks like you'll come close to achieving 40% or less, in my estimation.
Okay.
I would like, and I know you agree, I would like to perhaps get a response from the architect.
Yes, I think it's very viable. We're looking for a reduction of 329 square feet to get it under 40%. Meaning that I think we can cut back on the proposed new deck a little bit. That's 120, plus
Right.
cutting back part of the existing deck. My goal would be to get to the 3,800 square feet, which means that we'd be at 39.9%.
Okay. I think you have a lot of wiggle room that you can work with up on the north end of the existing deck.
Sure.
All right. So
If I may,
Wait.
just so I understand, the 120 feet on the extension, the new deck area, is that just that corner piece?
that's
It's-
correct. It'd still be a bridge.
It's this
Uh,
piece in here. This piece in here is 120 square feet.
Right, but you're not gonna get rid of that whole thing, are you?
We're gonna, I'm gonna suggest that I reduce a piece of this and a piece over here just to get a bridge and then preserve as much of this as possible. So I'd have to come back to you and tell you how much of this deck is being removed to do that.
Okay,
I may actually take the suggestion to slide this over a little bit. I would prefer not to enclose this, but if we slid it over, perhaps get this a little bit more flush on this side, on the neighbor's side, so without reducing the square footage of the bedroom. But I think we can achieve the reduction to the level the board is comfortable with some of the suggestions made.
And I believe I heard the applicant state that he was in favor or would seriously consider that.
Yes, I do.
Okay. That's my basic comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. Mr. Gabucci, Mr. Ansari, and I share the same thoughts and concerns that have been expressed by the rest of the board members that you've heard this evening. I would think at this point, you've heard the concerns. I don't know whether you want to proceed with trying to obtain an approval this evening. I would think at this point, it would probably make the most sense for you to caucus and come up with a revision to your plan.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I think that's a good idea. We'll pull the request for approval tonight and resubmit to you for the next meeting, whenever that may be.
Okay, Marina?
That's fine. The applicant won't have to renotice. We'll just be carrying this hearing to the next meeting. And I believe Ed is on the line. Our next meeting is on the 28th.
28th, on the 28th.
April 28th?
Yes. After that, it's May 12th.
When do we need to submit to make the April 28th meeting? 10 days?
If you can submit the revised plans 10 days before, that would be preferred,
Okay.
yes. Mhm.
Okay.
Does anybody on the board have any objections to that? Okay.
10 days before is going to cut it really close to him, considering that works out to this Friday or Monday.
Ooh.
I suggest you move to 5/12.
5/12?
That might be more practical.
Yeah, that way you could.
I think that makes the most sense. Well, Mr. Ansari and I will talk about it, but I think that makes the most sense too.
Okay.
Yeah, we only have 2 applications on that date, so yours should fit right in.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Thank you very much then.
So the
Do we have to open it to the public at this point or at next meeting?
We can open it to the public tonight if you'd like, but that's not necessary because the board is just carrying the
Okay,
motion.
yeah, we could do, we'll wait till next meeting then. Okay.
Okay.
Now, do you need a motion? carry?
Yeah, we'll need a motion to carry the application. And I just want to confirm with the applicant that the new date is acceptable.
That was
Mr. Ansari.
May 12.
May 12th.
Okay, yes, acceptable.
All right, may I have a motion to carry this application to the May 12th meeting, please?
So made, Merman.
Have a second?
Second.
Okay.
That was Mr. Craig.
Merman made the motion.
Yeah, Merman
Okay.
made the motion. We have Mr. Cray on the second.
Okay, and we can do a voice vote for the carry.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion carries.
Okay, so Just as a notice for the record, the application for Mr. Ansarian, address 282 Oak Avenue, block 1206, lot 4, will be carried and heard at the May 12th, 2021 meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Marina.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda for this evening is Dominic and Francine Munofo, 332 Van Son Drive, block 1107, lot 36. Develop additions to the existing dwelling with associated site improvements, front and rear yard setbacks, and front porch encroachments in the front yards, seeking variance relief. I believe the applicant is here. Good evening.
Yes, good evening. This is Charles Sarlo, attorney at law on behalf of the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Dominic Munofo, regarding block 1107, lot 36, commonly known as 332 Van Son Drive. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, council, and Madam Secretary.
Good evening, Mr. Sarlo. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Finley?
I just want to know who all is on the call for the meeting today. There's I see the applicants. Okay.
The applicant and Matt is the architect, Matt Evans.
Okay.
And there should be the engineer possibly joining us if she gets out of another meeting. If not, we're prepared to proceed though.
Okay. All right. So the applicants, I'll just have you state your name and spell your last name and state your address for the record.
Dominic, D-O-M-I-N-I-C-K, last name Munofo, M-U-N-O-F-O. Address is 332 Van Son Drive in River Edge.
And Francine Munofo, F-R-A-N-C-I-N-E-M-U-N-O-F-O. 332 Van.
Okay. All right. And then could you please raise your right hands? You swear that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. Thank you. And you said that the architects are also on. We can swear them in as well.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
So whoever's going to be giving testimony, could you please state your name, spell your last name, and provide your address for the record? And then provide the board with some background on your qualifications, please. Oh, we can't hear you.
Maybe having the same problem I had earlier. May have to dial back in.
Yeah, they might have to leave and then come back.
Okay, why don't we proceed? That we'll come back.
Say, if you would like, Mr. Sarlo, you could start your presentation, or we can wait until they come back.
I can, given the nature of the matter, I could give a brief introduction. It won't be lengthy, again, because of the nature of the matter, and then we will need the architects to get back on so they can testify after they get sworn in and qualified as experts. But in the interest of time, yeah, let me start, Madam Secretary, so we don't take up the board members' time. Again, thank you, members of the board, for entertaining this particular application. This application is for the expansion of a single-family house. It's interior renovations as well as exterior renovations to upgrade the structure. The architect can testify, but I believe this is a house that was built in the 1950s. It's typical ranch that was built during that time period, and it really has not received any substantial upgrades. And the intent is to improve the front facade architecturally, as well as raising, going on, increasing the second floor and going out the rear to provide more living space consistent with today's standard of living. The architect will testify that they looked at different options in order to minimize the number of variances that were required, but given the nature of the lot, I'm sure you're all familiar with the property. It's at the corner of Van Saun Drive. It faces Van Saun Drive, and then Van Saun Court is on the right-hand side. So in essence, it's a corner lot, and the lot actually runs. It's narrower from the Van Saun Drive to the rear lot line than it is from Van Saun Court to the side yard. So as a result of the proposed improvements, we do have a front yard setback that is we're requesting variance relief from. The requirement, as the board knows, is 30 feet, and it's currently 30 feet to the structure. And we are requesting a variance where the new front yard setback would be 27.9 feet, so not a substantial deviation. And we're also looking at a rear yard setback. Again, currently there is on this particular one, there is a deviation. 22.2 feet exists, and the requirement is 25 feet. And we are proposing to have an 18.1 foot setback. Those are the two C variances that we need. We also need another variance in accordance with, I guess, your design criteria, which I almost consider, it's not a C1 variance, I almost consider it a design variance. This is the height of the covered porch, not permitted to exceed the first floor in height of the roof line. And we'll have the architect testify in that regard. I think, Matt, are you back on?
Yeah, can you hear us?
Perfect. Okay, so
sorry.
No problem. I did stretch out the introduction to get Mr. Evans back on. So, Mr. Evans, I think Madam Secretary wanted to get your names on the record and then sworn in, and then we want to qualify you as an expert in the field of architecture. And I know, Mr. Evans, you could also do planning testimony. So when you do provide your qualifications, if you could provide your planning credentials also.
Okay.
So just, you could state your name, spell your last name, provide your address for the record, and then give the board some qualifications, so then they can qualify you as an expert, and then we'll swear you in.
Okay, Matthew Evans, architect planner, 470 Chamberlain Ave, Paterson, New Jersey. I'm presently licensed in the state of New Jersey as a professional planner, a registered architect, and I've testified before numerous boards in Bergen County, Passaic County, and throughout New Jersey, and been qualified as a planner and an architect.
And then will you also be testifying, the person next to you? I'm sorry.
Yes, I am. Philip Finnemore. I work with Matt Evans at 470 Chamberlain Ave, Evans Architects. I have just over 25 years of architectural experience. I've testified on numerous other applicants in Passaic and Bergen County, specializing in residential design development. And I will be testifying this evening on the basis of the design and its comparison to the neighboring properties.
Okay, so after hearing those qualifications, does the board accept the qualifications to be heard tonight?
Has either one of you fellas, or either one of you architects testified before the River Edge Board before?
No.
No.
I'll suggest that the board accept the qualifications.
Thank you.
All right, and so are there any other comments? Okay, so if you just raise your right hands. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. And you can proceed, Mr. Sarlo.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. So I'd like to have, I guess, Phil, you're going to testify initially?
Sure.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So I'd
So
like
we
to
have
have,
some graphics here we'll share. We'll start off with the we'll put the site plan up. We'll show the existing and proposed. I'll talk about that briefly. The engineer should be joining shortly, and then focus more on the architectural. So we're going to have to probably go back to the site plan.
Okay. Let's see what else we have. The site plan. Give me a second. Hold on. Okay, can you see that?
Okay, we'll go to the second sheet.
No.
Okay, here we go. Sure.
Oh wait, I think we have to put it on this side. All right, hold on. I gotta move it over. You can't see it then, right? Hold on.
No, it's not shared yet. Okay.
Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay. So what we have here on the left are the graphics representing the existing conditions of the subject property. On the right-hand side, the hatching along the rear, the bottom right corner, and the front two boxes that are shaded in are the proposed additions. Give you a little history on the house before we get into the weeds of the design. The house is it's an original house, one-story dwelling, single-story dwelling, built in the 50s. The existing square footage of the main house is just over 1,000 square feet. It's 1,048 more precisely. It's a two-bedroom home with one full bathroom. It has a one-car garage, undersized garage, barely suitable for a standard mid-sized vehicle. The proposed home, once completed, if approved by the board this evening, would have a very small increase to the existing first floor of around 212 square feet of living space. It would add an additional 52 square feet to the existing garage, and it would add a partial second floor for a second floor addition of 1,045. When all said and done, the house would be just over 2,000 square feet after construction. That's actually 2,305 square feet. So we have a full first floor and a partial second floor, which we'll get into. The additions, as Mr. Sarlo stated earlier, and the variances that he stated earlier are along the rear lot, as shown in by the cursor, and along the front where we have the center porch, and then a box bay window. I think if we go to the architect graphics, the architect floor plans would make a lot more sense, and we can always come back to this. Do you see the existing architectural plans?
Yes.
Okay. So in the upper left-hand corner is the existing first floor as it stands today, as I mentioned earlier, around 1,048 square feet of living space. The rectangle that goes around then the dashed dot line following the cursor, that is the zoning parameters that are allowed for this property. So as you can see, existing today, a good portion of that home is non-compliant. So in developing the design documents, we maintain high level of sensitivity in how we can accommodate the owner's needs and still try to be sensitive to the zoning setbacks, sensitive to the line of sight, and sensitive to the air and light around the surrounding properties once the home is built, if the board finds it acceptable. In doing so, we were looking at where we can add square footage to the home while still maintaining the integrity of the property and the surrounding site. The second sheet, Matt. If you see here on the second sheet, the upper left-hand corner, this is what is proposed. At the end of the day, we're taking the existing two bedrooms that are on the first floor, we're moving them up to the second floor, which we'll get into. And at the end, we're left with a small dining, an eating kitchen, a family room on the bottom left, and off to the right, we have a full bathroom, small home office, and a slight expansion to the existing one-car garage. The current conditions of the garage do not allow access from the main house. So one of the criteria was to be able to enter the garage through the main house. With an undersized garage, once a vehicle is parked in the garage, it became very difficult to gain access from the main home. So a slight expansion, as I mentioned earlier, in the order of 52 square feet, allowed access from directly inside the home. Going to the second floor. Second floor is adding, again, that home today is a one-story structure. Second floor, we're adding 1,045 square feet. We are adding 3 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, and some closets to support the day-to-day activities. Now, in a perfect world, the client was looking to maximize the existing first floor and build over the entire second floor. So following the logic of being sensitive to the site, knowing that we had variances and trying to soften the variances that we would be looking for approval on, we maintained the home as a 3-bedroom home rather than a 4-bedroom home with 2 bathrooms. Uncommon is typically you would find that in a master suite, you would have an ensuite bathroom. Not able to achieve that, again, following the logic of trying to be sensitive to the bulk and massing of the structure that's proposed. From the exterior, looking at the entire the massing of the home, we also were sensitive with roof lines and placement of windows and everything else by balancing off the home in a stepped fashion, starting from the left with the low elevation and then gradually stepping up to the right with the taller elevation to capture the proposed second floor. As Mr. Sarlo mentioned, there is a variance or variance on the front portico roof height. I know the ordinance says that the roof height shall not exceed the height of the existing first floor. So to achieve that, we clipped the top of the portico to have more of a shed hip structure rather than a pointed structure, which would only make that roof that much taller. Again, trying to be as sensitive as possible to softening the ask. The home, once completed, will match or maintain the integrity of the neighboring properties. It is a home that will have some stone along the bottom base. It'll have a plank siding, horizontal clapboard siding. It'll have some vertical board and batten along the top. So what we're doing is to soften the mass. We're not picking one material and spreading it throughout the entire facade. We are varying the material. Architectural aesthetics, when you vary the material type, material color, you're naturally creating a softened aesthetics. And that was very sensitive to the client and also to our office. Along the side, this is on the opposite side, on the west side of the property. That is not on the courtyard side, but on the opposite side. Because this side, again, this side is fully compliant, so we can skip through this rather quickly. But again, because this side is still within the zoning parameters, however, close to the neighboring property, we were sensitive to that and we maintained pretty much a solid facade, very little windows, 2 small windows flanking the fireplace just to get some natural light, but at a higher elevation off the floor to maintain privacy inside and outside. Along the rear, similar aesthetics to the front. We didn't neglect the rear. We tried to soften the rear as best possible and create some architectural interest along the rear. This section here that has the peak in the window, that's over the kitchen sink. This section here, these are just the 2 bedrooms on the 2 added bedrooms on the second floor, with the double window on the left being the master suite and the double window close together being on a spare guest room. That's as far as a quick review of the architectural aesthetics, what we're proposing as far as square feet, where the variants are kind of falling under, and so forth. We definitely open to any questions, or if you need further clarification on the approach, the finished materials, and the balance of the architectural integrity of the design.
Thank you, Phil. If I could just ask a few follow-up questions for you. When you designed the structure, I know you said the sensitivity of the neighborhood. Can you talk a little bit about the neighborhood? How does the proposed architectural style and addition on the second floor and the front facade for that matter fit in with the surrounding neighborhood, particularly the court?
Sure. What I did is I took a couple of photos on Google Earth. Right here, this photo that's shown on the top, structure, subject property, as I mentioned earlier, 1,048.
Phil, I'm sorry, let's just get these introduced as exhibits.
I'm sorry.
So what are you do you know how many photos you have here that you're going to show?
There are 6 pages, 2 photos on each page.
Okay.
Okay,
And
these weren't submitted with the application?
no.
We're not.
Okay. Okay, so there are 2 photos on each. There's 8 pages?
6.
6 pages. Okay, so we can just mark this whole set of photos as Exhibit A, and each page will be numbered.
Okay. This was a last minute thought, and I apologize for not submitting in advance. I just thought the graphics would help the board and everyone on this call get a better understanding of the placement of what's proposed.
Okay.
And Phil, you said that where'd you take these photos from?
Google Earth.
Google Earth. Is there a date associated with that? Can you tell?
They're random.
Random. Okay.
But within the last 12 months.
Okay. And you've been to the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
And basically what you're going to show the board members in these photographs, can you represent that they are consistent with what you saw in the neighborhood?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to have Exhibit A introduced as evidence.
Okay, that's acceptable. Could you just make sure to forward this exhibit to the board secretary after the meeting? Thank you.
I will. Okay, so this here is a Google Earth. The red circle represents the subject property, corner property, and some of the photos I'll show you are represented with these dots that are shown across the courtyard. Mr. Sarlo asked the question, how does the subject property relate to other properties in the neighborhood? The property here, which is known as Lot 31, is a splitting image of the property of this evening's applicant. I'll show you before and after photo of that home that was recently added onto that had, I believe, had similar type of setback concerns or issues, and how it looks before and after. So if you want to scroll down, we'll find that. Keep going. Right there. So this here is the 318 Van Soln Drive. That is lot 31 that I mentioned. That is the before photo. Again, very similar in scale and massing. The property based on the tax map is very similar, if not identical to the applicant's property. That is the home that is currently on that same property. Again, probably on the right-hand side, similar concerns stepping it back because of side yard encroachment, but at the end of the day, the massing and the volume, I qualify this home as very similar, if not slightly more square footage. How I came up with that is I simply counted the vertical lines of the clapboard, knowing the width of the clapboard, and then I took the existing footprint of the house that was scalable on Google Earth. So very similar in square footage and bulk and volume and massive. If we go to the courtyard side, granted the properties are slightly larger, but relatively speaking, the relationship of the property to the home is the same relationship of the applicant's property to home. These are larger properties, but the coverage percentage of these properties compared to the applicant's properties, the applicant this evening falls way under the lot coverage and the building improvement coverage than the surrounding property. So I just wanted to mention that yes, the property is slightly larger, but the homes are that much larger, and the relationship between the two are comparable. If you go to, you have some others. Keep going. Oh, yeah, keep going. Sorry. This is also on Van Soln. These are other homes. This is on Van Soln Court. So this corner house is the house that I mentioned that is a splitting image of the property of the applicant. The one adjacent to it, larger property, but a much larger home. So this is a full 2-story home. This has a roof covering over the front door that exceeds the first floor, much greater than how we are proposing this evening. We're at pretty much at 1.5 of the total height. You have some others on Van Soln Drive that these 2 homes here on Van Soln Drive are also homes that, based on the property, slightly larger than the applicant, but the lot coverage is marginally close to the maximum allowable for an R1 zone. And this is a couple doors down. And that's all I had.
Thank you, Phil. So can you go back to the architectural plans and can you show the board members what is creating the front yard setback of 27.9 feet?
Or the site.
So the 27.9 feet is from this box bay window in the family room. Bottom left corner. So the encroachment, so the existing house is at the 30 foot, which is allowable in an R1. This box bay window, widening the space a little more to make it a little more usable, which was creating a 27.9. And then the front porch remains compliant. So how we envision this is because the town in an R1 zone allows 35 square feet of front portico to encroach on the setback, we felt that we would be able to allow the homeowners a little extra square footage in the family room and still stay behind the 5-foot projection forward of the front portico. And it allowed them to get a little more elbow room in the space that, rather than extending more towards the back and creating a greater variance request, we bumped out the front a little bit, a couple feet, to stay behind the 5-foot projection.
And the bump out there for the family room, does that also provide some additional architectural detail from the front facade to be consistent with the neighborhood?
It does. Trying to be sensitive to that as well. Because that's a 1-story structure, and to soften the massing by creating that projection forward, it allow us to create additional shadow line and an additional gable to balance off with the top right inside. So the home didn't look too top heavy on one side versus the other. So we felt that it was a healthy balance between the massing scale and also sensitivity of the setbacks.
Okay, and if we could go to the rear yard, can you just
let's go through.
Tell the board members what's creating the rear yard variance there? I know you went through the floor plan, but specifically.
Sure. So the dark thick lines around the back perimeter, that's all added wall. The dotted line here is where the existing house is today. So 2'3" is the addition in the kitchen. Now, as I mentioned earlier, would we have liked to extend the rear yard, the kitchen another 2 or 3 feet? Absolutely, but we felt that this was what was minimally required to get an island, a clearance between the island and the counters, and the rear wall to work. So this small black sliver along the rear is what's causing the rear setback. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the existing house is several feet within the setback to begin with. So if we did nothing, the house is non-compliant. So from starting off, we're already non-compliant, and now we're asking for this evening for a slight increase to the non-compliance.
And you had also said you're expanding the 1-car garage?
Correct. Right now, the garage from this wall here, where the cursor is, projected back, is where the existing garage is. So this bumps out a little more because naturally the back of the house had a little jog. So the garage now is able to support a 9-foot overhead garage door, which is the standard now for garages past 10, 12 years, rather than an 8-foot door that was a 50, 60 standard that was just grandfathered in. 9-foot door that allows for a modest vehicle, and that also allows for direct access from the garage into the home, previously not achievable.
Okay, and it provides for a little bit more storage in the garage?
It provides for storage in the garage. So one of the challenges were the homeowners were sensitive to keeping recyclables and trash cans and things that naturally would not fit in the garage without interfering with the vehicle parking stall. So what this allows now is for an area for recyclables, for trash cans, for things that they can remove from the exterior that is clearly visible on a corner home when you go on the court and also on the drive. And it allows for at least one vehicle storage to be put in the home and not have 2 or 3 vehicles in the driveway. So that was also a main objective of the homeowners.
And as a result of expanding the garage, notwithstanding, you are creating the rear yard, or you're exasperating the rear yard setback. You are removing a detached shed on the left side that is currently in the side yard. Is that correct?
Yes, and I have a photo of that as well. I think that the graphics will help. It's a rather large shed. It's a rather large shed that we're removing. So as a result of increasing the garage slightly, we are removing that shed there. That is on the west side of the property. That shed is currently non-conforming. It's a pre-existing condition, and that will be removed.
Okay, and then based on your observations of the neighborhood, the house located behind the existing structure, that fronts on Van Zorn Court, is that correct?
Yes, so that brick house is Van Zorn Court, the immediate, the the home that's immediately to the rear of the applicant's home.
So their side yard is adjacent to the rear yard where we're creating the rear yard variance. Is that correct?
It is correct. And if I may add, is what's not clear on this photo is the brick house that's immediately to the rear of the applicant's home is angled and skewed. So it's not perpendicular to the applicant's home. So most of the neighboring property is garage, and then to the space above, there's one small window on the side, but with the home skewed on a slight angle, and it's better viewed from a bird's eye view, it creates a kind of an offset in any direct line of sight.
Okay, and the purposes of side yard or rear yard setback is to provide for air and light to adjacent properties. Is that correct?
That is correct. Okay,
and in this particular case, notwithstanding we're exacerbating the rear yard setback, where your hand there is, your cursor, what are you demonstrating to the board members here?
I'm sorry.
So there's basically the adjoining property that would be impacted, if at all, by the variance. It's basically a garage, right?
I'm sorry. Yes, it's a garage.
Okay, and there is a second floor that is living space. Is that correct?
On the applicant, on the neighboring property, yes, there is a second floor. The second floor naturally starts at a higher elevation, because if you look at the applicant's property, it's a 7'10" first floor structure. We're only going to an 8-foot second floor, which common today is a 9-foot for second floor. Whereas the neighboring property, using the similar metrics as I mentioned earlier, just counting, knowing that it's a newer home, and that newer homes are going with a 9-foot ceiling first and second floor, and just counting the horizontal rows of the masonry units, the home naturally is that much taller. So line of sight between the neighboring property and the applicant are several feet difference in elevation.
And well, you probably don't have a photograph of it, the left-hand side of this structure on Van Son Court, on the left side, on the second floor, it only has one window, and that's towards the rear of the side yard. Is that correct?
If there's anything in
Do you have?
But to answer your question, yes, there's only one window that's viewable.
Okay. And you have previously shown with your architectural elevation that the second floor that you're proposing is only partly on the second floor. Is that correct?
The second floor is, it's I'm sorry, it's partial. Yes, I missed that. Yes, it's partial.
And that second floor addition is actually from more on the right hand side of the structure. It's right from whatever, I don't want to say the midpoint, but yeah, two-thirds to the right.
What's that?
Correct. Right.
So yeah, so this box here, a little bit less than half of the second floor is not being built over. We ended up building over the right half because, again, of the angle of the neighboring property and the angle of the applicant's property, these windows kind of look more into the court than directly into the neighboring property.
Right. So where you're building the second floor with the rear yard encroachment, there are no windows on there are no windows on the adjacent property. Is that correct? Thank you. I have no further questions at this time for the architect.
Okay, why don't you continue with your presentation, Mr. Sarlo, and we'll take questions from the board when you're.
Okay, very good. So I believe the engineer is now on. We've covered most of the ground, but since she is on, Christine, are you on?
Yes.
Christine, are you? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Okay, so could you please state your name for the record, spell your last name, provide your address, and give the board some background as to your experience?
Sure. Kirsten Osterkorn, Kiersten Osterkorn, from Omlin and Osterkorn, 22 Madison Heights, Wyckoff, New Jersey.
Okay.
I'm testifying tonight as an engineer and as a planner. I received my bachelor's in engineering in 2006 from Rutgers University and my license in 2011. My license is still in good standing. I have not had the pleasure of being in front of your board. I have been in front of numerous other boards in Bergen County, Morris, Passaic, Union, Hudson, a bunch. And my planner's license I received in 2013, which is still in good standing as well. And I've been testifying a lot on similar applications like this.
Okay, does the board accept those qualifications or have any questions?
No
I'll
question.
recommend that we accept the credentials of the engineer.
Thank you.
Okay.
And plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, and then Ms. Osterkorn, could you please just raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
So Kirsten, before you got on, I know you have submitted drawings as part of the development application package. It's a set of 2 drawings. These drawings were prepared either by yourself or under your direction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and we did already go through the variances on your zoning table.
Okay,
But
great.
why don't you, for the benefit of the board, why don't you highlight any other site plan engineering items that you think is important for the board to know?
Okay. I was listening. I know the architect went through the layout and understanding that the variances were talked about. Currently, right now, with the access off of Vanson Court, the driveway, we're keeping the access at the same point. We're extending out the back a little as described, and we have the bump out in the front and the covered portico, which the bump out is part of the variance request. With respect to engineering, the grades around the property are remaining the same. The building height conforms. We are proposing a seepage pit to take the entire roof water system, which currently there wasn't anything on site before. So there will be a negative impact to neighbors and the public sewer system. That's an overflow pipe. But currently right now, everything goes to splash box or just out to grade. So collecting that all will be a positive for the site. From an engineering perspective, there wasn't much else going on in the site. It was mainly more architecture and us discussing the planning. From an engineering, we are proposing the patio, but all the coverages are under what's allowed. Building coverage is allowed. With the proposed addition to the site, while the lot's conforming, the proposed work isn't overbuilding on the site. We're still complying with building coverage as well as impervious coverage. As it was just previously talked about, the variance request for the front yard is for a small bump out in the living room. That's a 12 by 2 foot area. It's a 2 foot encroachment in, and described more on the architectural basis of being able to provide on the front. I also looked at it as from a visual side as well, as when I looked at the street views of a bunch of the ranches, that they are flat across the front. They're older homes and they're just flat looking, that if we were just to go up and conform with that setback, you would have a big wall and there'd be no definition to it at all, that the minor de minimis bump out in the front adds character and aesthetics to the property for the homeowners as well as the neighborhood. With respect to the rear yard setback, the existing nonconformity of the rear of the home, they are looking to increase it 4 feet. But when I went into the interior and looked at the architectural layout, that area back there is their main living area. The family room's in the front, but you have the kitchen area and an open floor plan with the dining room. And knowing how things are right now, I mean, kitchen is where most people are half of the time in their house. And dining rooms are also used as homeschooling and home offices at the same time. That extra 4 feet, when I looked at the width of that and then compared it, it was worth the request for that extra room as well as the extended garage with a very minimal impact to the rear yard. As previously stated, that neighbor to the rear being on a skew, am I able to share my screen?
Yeah, you can share yours.
Oh, thank you. Can I introduce this aerial in?
We're not seeing it.
We're not seeing, yeah.
Oh, I gotta do it. Hold on, sorry. Wait, let me share it first. I just opened it. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes, so this will be marked as Exhibit B And if you could just provide a description of the photograph.
This is a Google Earth aerial of, we have Vanson Drive, Vanson Court. So 332 here is the property owner or the project where it's in front of you. And it's just from Google Maps.
Okay. And does it have a date at all? Or
no, I snipped it today. It's a snippet
okay.
image.
Could you just make sure to forward the photo to our board secretary? Thank you.
I took a look at the neighborhood when looking at the variances with the small bump out to the front and then the 4-foot extension to the rear, which basically is in line with this, the walkway along the back. And as testified by the architect for the home in the rear, that would impact it the most, that it is on a skew. And we are discussing that it's both the garage sides. Up on the second floor, there's a bathroom for our house that's facing that way. I don't really know what's inside there, but from the photos shown previously that it's a larger building. When I looked at the neighborhood of Vanson Court, while our address is Vanson Drive, and we have a bunch of other ranches, our access and everything coming off of Vanson Court, looking at the size of all of the other houses, ours isn't going to be massive in comparison. It's not overbuilding, as I stated. We are only putting the second floor on one side of the house, not the entire other side. But looking at everything in comparison, while I know lot sizes may be different, coming off of the curve of the road, there might be other parts of it, but from the look and the aesthetics of the neighborhood and for the homeowner, it's going to fit in with the neighborhood. I don't have as much more with the engineering side, and I know I've touched a little bit to the planning, so I just wanted to continue with that, unless Mr. Sarlo, you wanted me to touch upon anything else first.
Not on the engineering, but yes, go ahead with the planning.
Okay.
And I'll follow up with some questions if you don't.
All right, perfect. When I looked at, as a planner and looking at the neighborhood, I looked into if it was appropriate for the neighborhood and if it met the intent and purpose of the zone plan. Looking at the other houses, driving down the street, seeing how properties are being built up, expanding houses for more comfortable living space, especially with everything going on and being home more and offices and wanting that living area, it fit in. I didn't believe that the variances being requested were any way against or didn't meet the intent of the zone plan. Coming for the variance that I was trying to look at the positive and negative criteria, and I found it hard trying to find the negative when I was balancing out the positive, because the overall project is creating a more livable space for the family that wants to stay in town. They're within the community. They volunteer and are part of a lot of programs and such that are within the neighborhood. It fits within the neighborhood. And as when we looked at the pictures along Vanson Court, aesthetically with the stone mixture with the side, it visually fits in with the neighborhood. With respect to the positive criteria, I started looking at some of the purposes. With purpose A, promoting the health, safety, and general welfare. I believe that the project increases the general welfare of the neighbors by having the screening with some of the fences and the aesthetics of the neighborhood as a whole. Purpose B,
I think you only got one.
With secure safety from flood, with our addition of our drainage structure, it's just adding an additional element that is preventing water from just going into the public sewer system, that we're going to be putting more water, clean water, being able to put it into the ground and impact that way. Am I talking?
Did you mute me?
Mr. Merman, I think you need to mute.
You muted me.
Did I?
Yes,
We can hear you, Mr. Merman.
you can. Good.
I can mute you.
I do.
Really good.
Please continue.
Okay, going on to purpose E, appropriate population density. With there are different lot sizes in the area, and with the different houses, I think it allows the lot to be utilized for the appropriate manner in 2021. Staying within the neighborhood, having some slight additions, but keeping within the neighborhood density with all the lots. Purpose G is providing space in appropriate locations. We're not taking away really any green space. that we're keeping. There's a walkway in the back and we're just extending the house to that side of it. The driveway is being widened, so I know we are increasing our coverage, but in terms of large green space, the house isn't going to be overdeveloped, as I've stated, and completely take away from the green side of the property. And then purpose I is a desirable visual environment, as I've stated, and also stated by the architect. The new residence will definitely be a visual upgrade for the property. It'll work within the neighborhood. When I looked at the negative, and I know I'd said I couldn't find some, the stuff I had stated before with the small bump out in the front, it's not going to take away from the neighborhood. The rear yard setback, given the size, it matches along with the Vanson courthouses. It's not going to be a huge mass that's coming up next to something else. It's not going to be like a big wall of a property. And I didn't find any substantial impairment to the zone plan. So when I looked at everything, I thought the benefits and believe the benefits outweighed any detriment, that the proposed development's a great improvement to the site, and that the detriments are substantially outweighed by the advancing purposes of the MLUL. I also read into and looked at the Pullen versus South Plainfield case about the C2 balancing test, of showing that if overall the positive criteria outweighed it, that it would be looked overall for the project as a whole.
Thank you, Kirsten.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions for Ms. Kirsten.
Okay, you can continue, Mr. Searle.
We have no further witnesses.
Okay. Let's turn to the Borough Planner, Mr. Barron's.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tom Barron's, Board Planner. At this point, I really have no issues with the testimony or questions for the applicant, but I'll just offer a few quick observations. So, I recognize this is a corner lot, and in this particular neighborhood, I think there are very few, if any, corner lots or dwellings rather that have compliant rear yard setbacks, and this would be, one of those cases. The house is where it is. It's at the 30-foot compliant front yard setback and has a pre-existing non-conforming rear yard setback of 22 feet, I believe, where 25 feet is required. Just to reiterate very quickly, the variance relief being sought, we have the minimum front yard setback, which measures approximately 27.9 feet to the front bay window, where 30 feet is required. The portico has a compliant setback, but is over by about 5 square feet above the maximum 35 square foot threshold. The rear yard setback is going to be decreased a bit further to 18 feet, again, where there's a pre-existing non-conforming setback of 22 feet, where 25 feet is required. And the fourth variance is for the front porch, which exceeds the first story in height, which is technically not permitted by ordinance. We heard testimony by the applicant's various professionals that in terms of addressing the necessary statutory criteria, that some of the public benefits might be improving the aesthetics of the home and consistent with surrounding development, and that there is somewhat of a hardship in that the house is located where it is and the lot is configured as it is, and that it's the applicant's professional's opinion that there really are no detriments to the proposal. So I feel that this application is somewhat straightforward. I really have no further comments at this point, so I will turn it over to the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barron's. Board engineer is with us this evening, Mr. Costa. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, good evening. How are you? Again, with all the testimony on the record, they actually show seepage pits, but again, just for the board's clarification, they would have to pull a soil moving permit when they go for their building permits during construction, and then during that review, we check all of the drainage. But certainly, if you want to put it in your resolution, it's not going to hurt, but it's not going to matter one way or another because it's again, it's reviewed again at the building department level when they come in for their permits. Just as a side note in that area, because we've had water issues on that block, and currently there's some complaints right now that I actually went there this afternoon at 322 Van Swan Court. So just keep that in mind with the expansion of the house in that area. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
And one other thing, Matt, good evening tonight. How you been? We actually worked together on a couple of projects. Good seeing you, buddy.
Good to see you, thanks.
Costa, I don't get any acknowledgement?
Exactly. Well, I mean, Charles Sarlo, you speak for yourself. I mean, come on, that's, but good seeing you guys tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Costa. Ms. Boland, turn to you.
Yeah, I have no comments.
Great, thank you. Mr. Gibbons?
No real comments. Just applaud you for doing the best you can to fit in the neighborhood and, stay within reason. I think it looks great.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ericellian?
No comment. I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pfeffer?
I appreciate the very thorough and professional report, and I have no comments.
Thank you, Mr. Pfeffer. Mr. Grasso?
No comments this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Cray?
One question. I know you're expanding the garage. Currently, do the owners park a car in there, or will this be allowing us to get one car kind of off the street, off the driveway?
We do have a car. We do have a car in the current garage, but you can't open the door.
Right.
all
So,
the way.
right. So I guess my question is, typically, do you not park in the garage now because it's tough to use?
It is tough to use. We have to squeeze it to get into the garage.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Other than that, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cray. Mr. Esposito?
No comments. Good.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor?
No comments.
Thank you. Councilman?
Terrific presentation. Thank you all. No comment. It looks beautiful.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Merman?
Are you ready?
Let's have it.
No comments.
Wow.
Great job. My concerns and observations were all covered.
Very good.
I
Thank
think I'm
you.
going to buy a lottery ticket today. I never heard.
Yeah.
It's a rarity. All right. At this time, I'd like to open to the public. May I have a motion?
So moved. Mike Crane.
May I have a second?
Gibbons.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstaining? Okay. Ms. Kaufman, do we have anybody in the public this evening?
We do not.
Okay, thank you very much. May I have a motion to close to the public, please?
So moved. Gibbons.
May I have a second?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstain? And we'll now close to the public. Okay. At this time, I would like to entertain a motion on the application. Mr. Merman?
All right. I'll make a motion that the land use board regarding the application for 332 Van Zorn Drive, block 1107, lot 36, that the requested variances be approved and that the understanding that Mr. Costa will review the seepage pit and any soil movement requirements when the package is submitted for a building permit.
Thank you, Mr. Merman. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Councilman Kaniga. Ms. Dinley, can we have a roll call?
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. Caslin?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Cray?
Sorry. Yes.
Mr. Ericellian?
Yes.
Ms. Councilman Kinigo?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeffer?
Yes.
Mr. Esposito?
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes.
Terrific. Congratulations.
So much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for
Thank
very
you.
much.
Really
Well,
Thank you, everyone.
application Present and presentation. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it. Okay. So just one item, or actually a couple of items before we break. Appreciate you all sticking in there this evening. Tom, you had wanted to. Tom, I guess Tom was here. Okay. Tom had wanted to mention for our informational purposes, but I guess we'll table that to the next meeting. So the one thing I wanted to mention to the group was we got a very nice email from Mark Dollahan, whose resolution we approved this evening, complimenting our clerk Ed Alter for his organizational capabilities and keeping things running smoothly, and he was very appreciative and of Ed's efforts, and so I just wanted to publicly acknowledge Ed and thank you, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I actually saw Mr. Dallahan today, and he said the same exact thing to me, saying that Mr. Alter was wonderful to deal with.
Thank you, Ed. We appreciate it. Anything else from anybody? All right. On that note, thank you for sticking in there. As I said, I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second, Merman.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is now closed. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
it.
everyone.
Great night, everyone.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.